It was both.
Both.
I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point.
What made Prince Harry, Kate Middleton, and Queen Camilla come together for a shocking joint announcement? And why is the world still talking about it? From private palace meetings to a statement that stunned the media, every moment revealed truths the monarchy never expected to share. Stay with us, because what they announced will change how you see the royal family forever. Burrell's secrets light a match. When Paul Burrell's name resurfaced in palace conversations, it wasn't merely nostalgia. It carried the weight of a decades-old perspective few, outside the royal inner circle, had ever witnessed. Burrell, Diana's trusted butler, had chronicled moments that the monarchy preferred forgotten. But now, in the age of digital rediscovery, his words gained explosive new life. Key passages from his testimonies, once buried in print and obscure interviews, were being highlighted online, drawing global attention. Digital creators and historians meticulously pieced together Burrell's insights, revealing a dimension of Diana's life the public rarely saw. His accounts detailed private struggles, moments of isolation, and interactions that had been misinterpreted by the press. Yet even more compelling were his observations about palace dynamics, who held influence, which decisions were made in secrecy, and how Diana navigated a world often indifferent to her personal needs. For many, these revelations painted a portrait of resilience amid a maze of complex loyalties. Inside the palace, staff quietly debated the renewed focus on Burrell's recollections. Long-forgotten anecdotes were being scrutinized under a modern lens. One diary entry described a private dinner where Diana had confided fears about her children's well-being and the pressures of public life. Burrell's recollections also shed light on unspoken alliances and the moments when advisors chose protocol over empathy. These details, once considered trivial, now revealed a web of decisions with lasting impact on the monarchy's public image. The ripple effect extended beyond private memories. Legal teams reviewed old affidavits and letters referenced in Burrell's statements, uncovering inconsistencies in the official narratives of the past. Some staff members were called upon to clarify long-ago events, reviving memories that had been deliberately left unspoken. Each recollection, while subtle in isolation, compounded into a tapestry of truths that the palace could no longer ignore. Public reaction intensified as clips and quotes from Burrell circulated on social platforms. Analysts noted that his unique perspective offered both intimacy and authority. He had observed Diana's daily life at close range, understanding both her vulnerabilities and her strategic awareness. Readers were captivated by accounts of her personal meetings, her quiet defiance, and the moments she challenged long-standing traditions. For the first time, many felt they were seeing the monarchy from the inside, not just the polished public exterior. The renewed scrutiny placed the palace in an uncomfortable position. While previous decades had shielded Burrell's insights from widespread discussion, the digital age had democratized access. Advisors recognized that any attempt to dismiss or suppress his revelations would be met with skepticism and backlash. The palace faced a delicate balancing act. Respect history without allowing it to undermine authority. What made Burrell's revelations particularly potent was their timing. As Diana's note and the recently reopened archives had already stirred concern, Burrell's words acted as a match in a room already tense with unseen pressure. Advisors feared that the combination of first-hand testimony and documented evidence might lead to questions they were unprepared to answer. Meanwhile, historians emphasized that Burrell's perspective was not opinion but observation. Details he had witnessed firsthand, often when others were absent. Even within the family, conversations shifted. References to Burrell's accounts sparked tension and reflection. Certain interactions Diana had once had with advisors and members of the royal household were now reconsidered in light of his testimony. The palace recognized that the narratives surrounding her life were far more complex than previously acknowledged, and that public perception was evolving with each resurfaced detail. Outside the palace, the media framed Burrell's revelations as both a window into the past and a challenge to the present. Analysis pieces connected his accounts to the broader resurgence of Diana's voice, emphasizing her foresight, her caution, and her awareness of the pressures surrounding her. For the public, it was a reminder that history does not simply remain buried. It waits for the right moment to re-emerge, often with consequences that reverberate across generations. As whispers of Burrell's insights continued to spread, the palace was forced to confront a reality it had long avoided. Questions now loomed larger. What truths were still hidden in plain sight, and how would the monarchy reconcile decades of private observation with a public demanding transparency? Each revelation carried the potential to reshape perceptions and influence decisions in ways no one could have predicted. Stay with us into the truth that was never meant to surface. Harry's breaking point forces a reckoning. The resurfacing of Diana's note, the reopening of long-hidden archives, and Burrell's revelations reached a critical juncture when Prince Harry began speaking more openly than ever before. Interviews, podcasts, and excerpts from his memoir, Spare, revealed a man grappling with the weight of inherited history and a mother's lingering presence. Unlike prior statements carefully measured for public consumption, Harry's words were raw, emotional, and impossible for the palace to ignore. Inside the royal residence, aides noted that Harry's reflections were not mere complaints. They were an account of personal struggle, intertwined with institutional pressures. He recounted moments of isolation, decisions made under scrutiny, and the constant negotiation between loyalty to family and loyalty to truth. Each revelation forced senior advisors to reassess the gaps between public narrative and lived reality, leaving them uncomfortably exposed. Harry's voice carried weight because it bridged generations. Where Burrell had provided observations from within Diana's immediate household, Harry added context shaped by experience and emotion. He described events from both personal memory and the perspectives of those who had shared his childhood, revealing the impact of unseen palace dynamics on his upbringing. His willingness to articulate anger, fear, and sorrow illuminated the consequences of secrecy and reinforced the accuracy of the resurging archives. The palace responded cautiously. Private strategy sessions became urgent. Counselors debated the timing of any statements, considering both public perception and family dynamics. Senior members acknowledged that Harry's honesty had shifted the stakes. Silence was no longer an option. Every move they made would now be interpreted not just as policy but as reaction to a personal narrative that had captured the global imagination. Behind closed doors, conversations turned introspective. Advisors realized that Harry's revelations were testing the very boundaries of loyalty and tradition. Some worried about the precedent his openness might set, while others recognized that ignoring the issue would erode public trust. Internal documents circulated, highlighting moments where prior royal statements had unintentionally contradicted facts now emerging from memoirs, archives, and Burrell's testimony. The palace faced a reckoning it had long postponed. Outside the walls, media outlets dissected every phrase from Harry's interviews. Analysts connected his accounts to Diana's warnings, Burrell's observations, and the reopened archival files. Social media erupted with commentary, speculation, and empathy. Public opinion was shifting rapidly, and the palace understood that controlling the narrative required more than traditional discretion. It demanded engagement, transparency, and a careful acknowledgement of historical truths. Harry's determination to speak openly also sparked tension within the family itself. Some senior royals viewed his statements as a betrayal, while others quietly recognized the necessity of honesty to preserve the monarchy's credibility. Advisors walked a fine line, attempting to mitigate conflict while respecting the power of Harry's words. The combination of personal revelation and institutional consequence created a unique crisis that demanded swift but thoughtful responses. Meanwhile, Harry's reflections had unintended consequences in royal staff circles. Employees who had once assumed their roles were behind the scenes and inconsequential found themselves in the spotlight. Conversations once private became subjects of analysis and commentary. The ripple effect extended across departments, creating an atmosphere of cautious vigilance. as staff sought to anticipate questions that might arise in public or private discourse. In addition, historians and biographers began re-examining key episodes of recent royal history through the lens of Harry's accounts. They compared public appearances, official statements, and personal memoirs to identify patterns and contradictions. These analyses, widely shared online, emphasized that the monarchy's narrative was not monolithic. The resurfacing truths demonstrated that the family's story was as much shaped by individuals' courage to speak as by their collective efforts to maintain tradition. The mounting pressure inside and outside the palace was undeniable. Harry's words, layered atop decades of concealed truths, had forced a confrontation with reality. Questions about accountability, transparency, and reconciliation loomed large. The monarchy had entered a moment where history, memory, and emotion collided, demanding choices that could redefine its future. Let us guide you into what no one expected. The warning that refuses to die. In a quiet corner of the palace archives, a faded envelope surfaced, its edges yellowed with age. The handwriting on it was unmistakable, Diana's. It wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, yet the contents were alarming. The note spoke of tensions, hidden betrayals, and a chilling prediction that, if ignored, could ignite turmoil within the royal family. Its sudden reappearance sparked whispered conversations among senior aides, many of whom had sworn to forget the past. The note itself contained details that suggested Diana had foreseen a time when her absence would be questioned, when truths long buried would claw their way back into the public eye. For palace insiders, the language was unnervingly precise. There were mentions of alliances, personal vulnerabilities, and a warning that secrecy could no longer protect the family. Analysts later noted the phrasing echoed moments from her last interviews, hinting at a prescience few had fully understood at the time. A sense of urgency spread through the palace corridors. Meetings were convened behind closed doors, their locations constantly shifting to avoid leaks. Advisors pored over the note line by line, debating whether it should be treated as a personal reflection or a deliberate prophecy. One senior aide admitted that reading Diana's words felt like stepping into a shadowed mirror of events yet to unfold. The room was filled with tension, the kind that tightens the chest and silences conversation. Journalists outside remained oblivious to the resurfacing document, but digital sleuths were already connecting dots. Social media groups dedicated to Diana's legacy began posting fragments of the note, sparking speculation. Historians noticed the unusual phrasing mirrored moments from letters Diana had written to close confidants, letters long thought lost. Each discovery added fuel to a fire that the palace had hoped would remain dormant forever. The psychological impact on senior royals was immediate. Those who had once dismissed Diana's warnings now felt the weight of their significance. Counselors were brought in to help navigate the mounting anxiety. The palace's public image, meticulously crafted over decades, faced an invisible threat. A ghost from the past demanding attention. The note wasn't merely a memory, it was a summons, a reminder that history has a habit of returning when least expected. Security protocols were tightened around sensitive documents. The discovery prompted an internal audit of all archival materials, with officials tasked to ensure nothing else of potential consequence could emerge. Yet the more they searched, the more it seemed the palace had underestimated Diana's foresight. The envelope, simple in appearance, had reopened old wounds, forcing everyone to confront what they had long ignored. Some aides quietly confided that the note revealed Diana's acute understanding of power dynamics. She had identified the cracks in relationships and the moments when ambition might outweigh loyalty. What had been dismissed as personal anxiety now appeared as a careful study of patterns, a warning written with uncanny precision. Each paragraph of her note revealed layers of insight, the kind that left readers questioning how one person could perceive the future so clearly. By evening, the palace was in a state of cautious unrest. Senior figures debated whether to leak portions strategically to control the narrative or bury it entirely, aware that either choice could have irreversible consequences. Meanwhile, outside the gilded walls, public interest was already stirring online. Whispers of a royal prophecy began circulating, threatening to turn personal history into global spectacle. As night fell, the note lay on a polished mahogany table, its presence more ominous than ever. No one could ignore it. It was as though Diana's voice had returned, demanding recognition and action. Questions lingered. Had the palace truly understood the depth of her foresight, or was this just the beginning of a reckoning that would shake the monarchy to its core? Stay with us as the mystery deepens. The ripple effect. Across the monarchy. The announcement sent shockwaves through every layer of the royal household. Staff who had operated in strict silence suddenly found themselves navigating new responsibilities, interpreting directives that emphasized openness over control. Long-standing hierarchies subtly shifted as those who had previously been behind-the-scenes advisors gained prominence for their ability to manage the palace's evolving public image. Even minor departments were consulted on communications strategy, highlighting how transparency had become a collective priority rather than a singular responsibility. Inside the palace, private conversations between senior royals reflected an unprecedented level of introspection. Members who had traditionally avoided confrontation now discussed historical missteps, tensions, and misaligned loyalties with a frankness that had previously been considered unthinkable. These conversations were not merely tactical. They reflected an acknowledgement that the monarchy's stability depended on understanding both the personal and institutional impacts of past decisions. Externally, the ripple extended across the globe. Foreign media outlets analyzed the announcement, comparing it with the treatment of royal families in other nations. Commentators noted that the monarchy's willingness to publicly reconcile decades of private tensions was rare in any institution rooted in tradition. Public forums erupted with debate, with viewers expressing both admiration for the family's courage and curiosity about what new cultural and historical standards this openness might establish. Even philanthropic and ceremonial branches of the royal family experienced consequences. Events previously conducted with formality and strict protocol began incorporating elements of narrative transparency, sharing context with attendees about why certain traditions existed and how they had evolved. The monarchy's public engagement subtly transformed, emphasizing dialogue and acknowledgement over silent adherence, signaling a recalibration in how the institution connected with citizens. Within internal operations, policy and protocol underwent rapid reassessment. Archivists and historians were tasked with creating guidelines for handling sensitive historical material, balancing privacy, accuracy, and public interest. Legal and advisory teams implemented frameworks to anticipate potential conflicts between personal disclosure and institutional protection, ensuring that future revelations could be managed without destabilizing the monarchy. These measures, though procedural, reflected a broader cultural shift. The royal family was no longer insulated from the consequences of personal truths emerging into the public sphere. Perhaps most notably, relationships among royals themselves began evolving in subtle but meaningful ways. Open acknowledgement of past struggles, combined with collaborative decision-making in response to the announcement, fostered new channels of communication. Trust, once strained by secrecy and misaligned priorities, slowly began to rebuild. The act of collectively confronting historical challenges created a precedent for dialogue that had previously been absent, signaling a transformation not only in public perception, but also in internal cohesion. Daily interactions became more transparent, with family members openly discussing concerns and offering perspectives they had once kept private. This shift allowed unresolved tensions to surface in a controlled environment, fostering empathy, mutual understanding, and a renewed sense of shared purpose. The ripple effects extended to the monarchy's long-term strategy. Advisors recognized that decisions would now be judged not only for their immediate political and ceremonial impact, but also for how they aligned with the evolving narrative of honesty, accountability, and engagement. The institution understood that its credibility was no longer measured solely by tradition, but by its willingness to integrate transparency, learn from the past, and respond meaningfully to both personal and historical truths. Plans for public engagement, archival management, and internal communications were recalibrated to reflect this new standard, ensuring that the monarchy's legacy would be shaped by both integrity and openness. By the end of this unprecedented period, the palace had entered a chapter defined not by secrecy, but by reflection, accountability, and adaptation. Decisions were now informed by a combination of historical insight, personal honesty, and public expectation, marking a transformation in the monarchy's relationship with both its members and the world it serves. The echoes of Diana's foresight, Burrell's observations, and Harry's candid accounts had reshaped not only the public image, but the internal dynamics, establishing a new standard for how the royal family would move forward. Were you amazed by the unprecedented announcement from Harry, Kate, and Queen Camilla, and the ripple effect it caused across the monarchy? Share with us which part of the statement shocked you the most.